Ready? Go!
Smash! I'm sorry.
Back in 2009, Community quickly established itself as one of the most creative sitcoms ever to hit television screens. You'd think a series that juggled a super wacky setting, incredibly neurotic characters, and loving homages wouldn't succeed, but it did. The series went on to garner critical acclaim and establish a small but loyal fan base. But discussing Community in any capacity is tricky. While the show's early seasons are fantastic, it's no secret that the later seasons are a little more divisive. Season 4 is everyone's favorite punching bag, but discussing just Season 4 doesn't do the show justice. There's still an entire third of the show left to talk about, and that's why we're here. As you could guess from the title, this will focus on the later half of Community, namely Seasons 4, 5, and 6. If you're checking this out, I encourage you to watch the first part of this series if you haven't already. The first part covers Seasons 1, 2, and 3, and what made the show so good in the first place. And while the reception of Community's later seasons is more mixed, make no mistake. The things that made Community so beloved are still here in the later seasons. It's just a little harder to find. And when all is said and done, it's still Community. While it had some rough patches, it speaks volumes that the show was able to work in spite of the roadblocks. That's more than you can say about other shows that got a second chance. With the preamble out of the way, let's check out Community's second half, starting with everyone's favorite season. Alrighty, so last time I mentioned how Dan Harmon is one of the factors that made Community. He's by no means the only one, but he's an uncredited writer on every episode, rewriting lines in each script to better fit the characters and the general style of the show. But as talented as he is, his unprofessional behavior led to him getting fired as Community's showrunner, a decision he himself largely agrees with. Filling in for Harmon was never going to be an easy task, and the burden fell to two new faces, David Guarcio and Moses Port. But despite the new showrunners and some new writers, most of the production team remained intact. There wasn't any reason to think that the show would be any different. Then the season aired. Season 4 is widely considered to be the weakest season of Community. Where Season 4 went wrong will vary depending on who you ask. There's a lot of focus on concepts over characters. It's not as funny. It's bad because Dan Harmon is gone. And while those statements aren't inaccurate, it's also a massive oversimplification of the problems. Some of Season 4's problems couldn't be helped. There's only so much the entire team could have done. But others aren't as excusable. So, in my own, completely subjective opinion, these are Season 4's biggest issues. It had less episodes to work with, it's very cluttered, and in general has weaker character writing. This isn't meant to be an exhaustive list of all Season 4's issues. Trust me, this section was way longer. But they're the ones that stand out the most, to me at least. They aren't exclusive to Season 4 either. You can see examples of shaky character writing earlier.
I said, "Ah, damn!"
And many of the issues we see here will go on to affect the later seasons. Season 4 is just when some of the show's issues are way more noticeable. So let's start with the first, most straightforward problem. For most TV shows, 13 episodes is the standard number that the network will order. If the show in question does really well, the network will order additional episodes, as was the case for Community's early seasons. But starting with Season 4, Community only got the initial 13 episode order. A shorter season isn't necessarily a kiss of death on its own, but it was a first for Community. The show always juggled a lot of moving parts, between its 9 cast members, and whatever storylines were going on from season to season. Slashing the episode count severely limits what you can do. Story arcs don't have as much time to develop, and with a cast as big as Community's, some characters may fall by the wayside. I mean, can you imagine doing an epic, grand-scale story arc in only 2 episodes? Me neither. The lower episode count isn't impossible to work with, but it doesn't help when you consider how much is going on in Season 4. Troy and Britta, Jeff's father, and Chang's return, are just a few of the plot threads we see in this season. Not to mention some of the new characters, like this season's many guest stars. None of this is new to Community, but that's a lot to manage when there's only half as many episodes to work with. It's hard to manage all these moving parts and do all of them justice. For example, cooperative escapism and familial relations is split between Jeff, Britta, and Papa Winger, and the others at Shirley's. The B-plot at Shirley's follows the same basic formula as your usual Community homage episode.
But sooner or later, our warden would come knocking. Mostly, we just waited for our time to be served.
But it's decent at best. The characters don't have as much time to really make a good use out of the premise, and Shirley's heartfelt resolution at the end is really rushed. On the other hand, the A-plot with Jeff and his father is a little better. It concludes a storyline that started in season 1, and Joel McHale delivers an awesome performance at the end.
I'm just a grown man who can't even look his own friends in the eye for too long because I'm afraid that they'll see that I am broken. So you get credit for that.
And while Jeff getting closure with his father is still pretty good, it still feels like a storyline that needed just a little bit more time. Jeff's absent father plays such a key role in shaping his personality, and it feels strange that it's resolved in such an abrupt manner. It's a storyline that could have benefited from having an entire episode all its own, instead of having to share the spotlight with a loosely related B-plot. Doing an episode on just Jeff and the group working through his father issues, or a full, dedicated Shawshank Redemption homage with the whole gang, would have worked really well. But doing them both at the same time leaves each part feeling a little underwhelming. And the storyline with Jeff's father isn't the only one that feels this way. Dubious writing aside, Chang's arc gets a lot of focus in season 4, but it just sort of ends. Jeff's graduation anxieties aren't really given the weight you'd think it would have, and Troy and Britta get together after 3 seasons of build-up, only to get next to no time dedicated to fleshing out their relationship. Hell, Jeff and Britta's friendship gets more of a focus than Troy and Britta in this season. You can see for yourself.
Help me heal your heart hole!
Never!
Britta, thank you. Congratulations on an awesome dance. You Britted the hell out of this thing.
But when it comes to Troy and Britta, they don't really get anything as substantial.
What is a glue-on anyway?
Can we stop talking about Abed?
Because he could tell my section was written by a strong, independent...
Would you excuse me? I've just seen an old friend.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What? You're helping?
Their biggest heart-to-heart moments come in basic human anatomy, as they're breaking up. Many of the weaker storylines, like Troy and Britta, are a symptom of the clutter that permeates throughout this season. It's like there's this constant battle going on in season 4, where all the storylines and episodic adventures are fighting for a wafer-thin piece of screen time, and the end result leaves each part feeling a little underbaked. More than any of the later seasons, season 4 is the one that could have benefited the most from the additional episode order. Now, I'm not saying an extra 9 episodes would magically fix everything, but at least there'd be just a little bit more to work with. Of course, something like this isn't really in the production team's hands. It's not like they could beg NBC for more episodes. Instead, the more feasible option would be to make some cuts. Admittedly, yeah, some plot threads would be really hard just to throw in the trash, but this season would have really benefited from the harsher cuts. Not only would this season feel less cluttered, but the storylines that remain would get enough time to develop properly. Cramming so much into only 13 episodes was going to be difficult no matter what. But when you look at the state of Community at the time, you can kind of see why it happened. By this point in the show's life cycle, its future wasn't set in stone. Community always had great critical reception, but as I mentioned last time, it always struggled with the network TV ratings. As you can see. And to add insult to injury, while Community did get renewed for season 4, a 13-episode renewal isn't a promising sign. It usually means the show is getting close to cancellation. So in short, Community was a show that had low ratings, only got a half-season, 13-episode order, and had its previous showrunner fired. Signs were not looking good for the show's future. So, the team did what they thought was best. They took every plot thread, storyline, and loose end, and attempted to give the fans a satisfying conclusion to all of it, just in case this really was Community's final season. Keyword being attempted. But don't take my word for it.
Right. And we knew that we only had we were pretty sure we only had 13 episodes. I mean, when we first started breaking stories, there was an off chance that we would get an order for 9 more. But we sort of, And of course, what's always in the air, or what was in the air in top of season 4, was if this is the end of the series, we wanted to have a satisfying ending. So yeah.
Obviously, we know Community wasn't cancelled. If the team knew in advance they get one more season, I could easily see them adjusting season 4 accordingly, like moving some storylines or episode ideas to season 5. But with the season 4 we have, they bit off way more than they could chew. Don't get me wrong, the situation doesn't give the team a get out of jail free card, but it does make some parts of the season at least a little more understandable. But Community isn't like The Good Place or Silicon Valley. Overarching storylines and plot threads are great, but they're not the main draw of the show. Community has always been about the adventures and misadventures of these characters. While there's a lot to love about the show, the characters are where Community has always shown the brightest. Its strongest asset was having a cast where all the characters had fantastic dynamics with each other, and were able to grow in spite of their personal flaws. Some characters did change more than others, but they all changed a little from season to season. But season 4 is when they start to stagnate. There are some slight changes, like Andy changing majors and Abed dating Captain Marvel. But for the most part, the cast doesn't change very much in season 4. Jeff is the exception, but the others don't get anything as substantial. And this isn't necessarily just season 4's fault. Season 3 did a really good job at wrapping up most character arcs. Almost too good. If we follow this chart written by some guy, you can see that everyone has gone through this journey by the end of season 3. And this is partially due to the show's uncertain future. Introduction to Finality is written in such a way to double as the series finale, just in case the show is cancelled. As we know, it wasn't. But there wasn't a clear direction for most of the characters going into season 4, with the exception of Jeff, and to an extent, Troy and Britta. And again, this isn't exclusive to just season 4, we'll see similar trends in the later seasons. While the lack of strong character development seems like a huge red flag, it's really not. Character development is obviously very important in just about any series, but it's only one aspect of the series. You can compensate for the lack of development in other ways, especially in a comedy, where the humor and character dynamics will do most of the heavy lifting. For example,
Get me a vodka rocks.
Mom, it's breakfast.
And a piece of toast.
Then I threw it down there, to prove a point. What was the point?
It was something to do with how metal travels faster than light, or...
No, it's not. Light is either on or off. There's no speed to light. It was an anti-science thing.
so season 4 of Community makes up for the lack of character development with, well, not very much. Britta gets criticized for being dumbed down over the course of the show, but in season 4, pretty much everyone gets the Britta treatment in some way. What I mean by that is that their basic, surface level quirks are dialed up, overshadowing just about every other personality trait they have. Troy is naive and emotional, Abed is logical and sees the world through movies and TV, Annie is studious and has a thing for Jeff, and so on and so forth. And while those quirks are fun and all, if you watch the show up to this point, I'm sure that you're aware that these characters aren't defined just by their quirks. They all have their own unique flaws, strengths, and insecurities. They always felt just a little bit more like real people, instead of these quirky, one-note TV characters. And we saw this shine through in their interactions. Last time, I mentioned the 115, which was the codename used in the writer's room to refer to the characters' snappy banter with each other. It's the glue that holds the series together, and where we can see much of the show's comedy.
Everything they do is some sick competition.
Oh, like you hate competition. How long did it take you to kiss Jeff after I told him that I loved him? Oh, that's right. First Vaughn, now Jeff. I better not smile at that wall outlet or you'll fry your tongue off. Can we please consider the threshold that we are crossing? We don't trust Abed. He shredded my backpack.
He freed my pet monkey.
Because we corrupted him. He's our innocent.
He put gum in your hair.
Empty the bag, Abed.
But snappy dialogue like this is only possible with strong character writing. It's a lot harder to write creative banter when the characters are way more shallow. There just isn't as much material to work with. And this bleeds into the show's emotional beats as well. As fun as the bickering was, it made the resolutions feel more meaningful. There was real conflict between the characters, and they had to work that much harder to earn those bonding moments. With Community's past seasons, the well-written characters led to fun dynamics, which led to sharper humor and stronger emotional beats. But in season 4, most of the characters are dumbed down, and everything else is dumbed down as well.
What's gonna happen we find out who betrayed us.
I wonder why you're so scared.
Oh, it wasn't me.
Couldn't we just say a ghost did it again?
We're gonna find out who did it when we get our grade.
Everyone's still excited about the big shindig?
Totally. I was worried about the wedding graduation mashup, but it's testing really well with women.
Oh, well, that's a load off.
The lack of strong character development is one thing, but weaker character dynamics are much harder to recover from. These dynamics are the bread and butter of Community. It's what carried episodes even if they didn't have a super creative premise. Many episodes in Season 4 are genuinely great ideas, like painting the study group as the villains of a story, or a bottle episode with a Greendale professor. But good ideas will only get you so far. Intro to Felt Surrogacy is one of the most disliked episodes of Community, but it has all the makings of a great episode. This wouldn't be the first time the group shares their secrets with each other, and it certainly won't be the last time. The puppets are just another spin on the formula. Plus it sorta makes sense. Puppet therapy is a real thing. It's mostly used for children, but still. And then Community's puppet episode actually plays out, and it's a really mixed bag. Jeff, Britta, and Pierce's secrets are fairly in character, as you can see.
I found the perfect girl for me, and then I met her kid.
I promised him I'd make it to a baseball game he had, but I bailed and never called again, and now I'm just exactly like my dad.
Truth is, I've never voted except when I watch The Voice.
But then we get to the other half of the characters, and it's a doozy.
I forgot my kids and left them all night in the grocery store.
I let Cornwallis rub my feet to give me all the answers to a test.
55 acres went up in a blaze, all because I burned an anthill.
It's strangely dark even for a Community, not to mention how jarring it is to hear these traumatic secrets from half the group. Annie, Shirley, and Troy's secrets aren't the sort of thing you write in just because. At least not without some kind of build-up or some kind of follow-through. And speaking of follow-through, it's especially weird that the very next episode, Intro to Knots, is centered around Professor Cornwallis. You know, the same professor Annie mentions in her shameful secret. And to top it all off, all the group secrets, no matter how jarring or dark they are really shallow. It's like what I mentioned earlier. It's like the writers took the basic, surface-level quirks of the characters and dialed them up to 11. There's almost none of that nuance we've seen in episodes like this, that very same nuance that led to fantastic episodes like Cooperative Calligraphy, and later, Cooperative Polygraphy. Instead, things are so dark and serious that there's almost zero room for great character banter, or a solid, earned resolution. Intro to Felt Surrogacy is such a great example of how even a good episode idea won't work, without the strong character writing to tie it all together. And that's really what brings down a lot of Season 4's episodes. There's a lot of really good ideas, but it's lacking the character writing to really make the most out of these ideas. That said, this doesn't mean the dynamics and humor are completely gone in Season 4. You can still see that spark that made Community what it is, like in some of these episodes.
Pretty freaky deaky, huh?
Annie, no, I meant the boxing match ring girl.
Yeah, see, this is why we can't just text about it, Jeff.
Come on, you slippery snake, slip up.
Doubtful. When he's alone, he mostly just practices smiling and frowning. We've all done it.
If anything, the characters are still what carry this season. The writing behind them just isn't as consistent as it used to be. Community Season 4 reminds me of episodes like Basic Rocket Science and Contemporary Impressionists. I don't think those episodes are terrible, but for whatever reason, they're a little less funny, a little less engaging, and just missing that extra touch we see throughout the show. They're just okay. And I'd say the same thing about Season 4 as a whole. It's like getting a bunch of okay episodes all at once. And while most of them are just kind of okay, there's a few that are actually pretty solid. Her story of dance uses Jeff and the Dean creatively, and it features some nice moments for the group's punching bags, Pierce and Britta. And speaking of the Dean, props to Jim Rash for writing Basic Human Anatomy. It does a great job at capturing the character writing, wit, and emotion we saw in past seasons. I just wish Troy and Britta's relationship was actually fleshed out by the time we got here. There's only 2 episodes I consider to be genuinely awful: Heroic Origins and Advanced Introduction to Finality. While I've been giving credit to some episodes for at least having good ideas, I really struggle to find something positive to say about either of these. besides the winger speech near the very end, which is admittedly really sweet.
It's unbelievable. And my love for you is immeasurable. Even when you split it 7 ways.
But Heroic Origins is just a really contrived mess. I really wish these episodes didn't exist, and not just because I personally dislike them. That's 2 entire episodes that could have gone to the character arcs or relationships that desperately needed it. Most review sites put season 4 at around the 60 to 70 range, and I think that sounds about right. It's far from the worst season of television, and paintball gun to my head, I'd rather watch Community season 4 than the average New Girl or Superstore episode. Season 4 isn't bad, but it is a step down from the average Community season. While losing Harmon was a heavy blow, season 4 was in a difficult spot for everyone involved, and it's a miracle that the season's episodes were half decent in the first place. But before diving into season 5, there's one more thing to talk about.
This is outrageous. I'm not leaving my trailer till there's food.
You don't have a trailer.
Well, then I'll rent a trailer, and I won't leave it till I have the one I don't have.
Pierce is a character that has one of the weirder arcs in Community, if you can even call it a character arc. It's more like a character V. Season 1 Pierce is a well-rounded character. While he's very much a product of a bygone era,
I'll move in with you.
Fantastic, buddy. Why don't you come over on Saturday? My tailor will fit you for a uniform.
episodes like Basic Genealogy and English as a Second Language reveal some of his positive qualities, like actual elderly wisdom and a genuine desire to help people. Season 2 is when this changes.
Ain't no party without drugs!
This is when his worst qualities take center stage. Much like Season 1 Chang, Pierce is the group's villain for most of Season 2. It sucks for Pierce's character, but on the other hand, it makes for great episodes, like Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and intermediate documentary filmmaking. It's hard to say if Pierce's change was the natural evolution of his character, or if it was a side effect of some behind-the-scenes drama. It's no secret that Chevy Chase is a little hard to work with, and that's putting it very nicely. Like Harmon, he's a bit of a diva. You can hear for yourself in this interview.
Why was Chevy so pissed?
He, as you may or may not have followed the saga, he did not want to be there. I mean, he said in every interview that he doesn't like the writing and he doesn't like the hours. So,
but it almost recreated his career, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he was
Chevy
really
kind of disappeared.
Yeah, he was really funny on the show.
And all the behind-the-scenes drama started to take their toll eventually. Due to a combination of drama, long hours, and general displeasure with the direction of his character, Chevy Chase left the show in Season 4, resulting in his sporadic appearances throughout the season. And while it's somewhat understandable, it's unfortunate because the writers were moving in the right direction. Season 3 introduces Moff Gideon as his half-brother, which opens up new possibilities for Pierce. And while he's not around as much, Season 4 features a return to the more wise, caring Pierce of Season 1.
She was acting crazy. Yeah, but what choice does she have? You make fun of her, you use her name as a synonym for screwing up. Cut her some slack, Jeff. For Pete's sake, let her be happy.
It was just too little, too late. But there was a silver lining. Community got renewed for a Season 5. And in a rare twist of fate, Dan Harmon was asked to return as showrunner. This was partially due to Season 4's lukewarm reception, but it was also because of a helping hand or two.
But you played an instrumental role in bringing Dan back and sort of, keeping the show going into a 5th season.
No, it really, after the 4th season, which was not the show, it was like that episode of Twilight Zone where the guy realized that he was in a zoo on another planet. And it just was not the show. And that man's brain is where it all exists. And I didn't think it was worth continuing if he wasn't back.
I guess the winger speeches really work. But as tricky as it was to handle Season 4, Season 5 will prove to be just as difficult in its own way.
You haven't paid rent at our apartment in 2 months. Well, why don't you sell him a pill that will help him give up on his dream? Relaxabrex doesn't make you give up on your dreams. That's a side effect. At least the drugs I sell don't get slurped out of my belly button. That's only on Tummy Tuesdays. Oh, it's okay to
While Season 4 Community is pretty divisive, I think Season 5 fits the literal Oxford definition of the word. The difference between Season 4 and 5 is noticeable right away, and it's not just because of sharper writing.
He's the one making bad bridges. That's like me blaming owls for how much I suck at analogies.
Instead of all these moving parts fighting for screen time, Season 5's early episodes are more focused, harkening back to the usual episodic nature of Community. While Repilot does introduce an overarching Save Greendale plot, it's so loose it might as well not exist. Which is good. Episodes like Introduction to Teaching and Basic Intergluteal Numismatics very much feel like classic Community episodes, with all the Greendale weirdness we know and love.
Minuses are made up!
It's riot time!
Season 5 was off to a great start, until we reached the elephant in the room. Geothermal escapism is Donald Glover's last appearance on Community, marking him the second main cast member to leave the show. And it was completely understandable. After all, Donald Glover was a rising star, and it's hard to blame the guy for falling victim to his own insecurities over time. From a production standpoint, it creates this rift in Season 5, where the early, episodic escapades have to pause in order to write conclusions for Troy and Pierce. At the same time, their farewell episodes are some of the best in Season 5. They illustrate the importance of giving story arcs enough time to do them justice. They don't have to fight with other storylines or subplots. The entire episode is dedicated to one complete storyline. And it shows. Cooperative Polygraphy and Geothermal Escapism are both incredibly funny, but still have enough emotional beats to give these characters a proper send-off. To an extent.
Here's your sperm. Even finer sperm. Obligatory sperm. Also sperm.
That aside, what follows these episodes is a bit of an adjustment period. Losing two main cast members sucks, but Community is an ensemble. The other characters do a pretty solid job at filling the void. There's a return to dynamics we haven't seen in some time, like Shirley and Jeff in the Black Mirror episode, and Abed and Annie in VCR maintenance and educational publishing.
Yeah!
Duncan's return is much appreciated, and his moments with Britta and Jeff in bondage and beta male sexuality are a nice breath of fresh air. And speaking of other characters, Season 5 is the beginning of a new trend for the show. Buzz Hickey is the first of Community's new additions, and for the most part, he's a great foil for the other characters. The group's never had this hard-boiled, no-nonsense kind of guy around, and I like that the writers explore different kinds of characters instead of just doing Troy or Pierce 2.0.
She needs to be taken out of your class.
There's only one thing that kind of sucks about him, and it's that he never has quite enough time to find his place in the group. Other characters have this problem too, like Shirley, Britta, and Pierce in Season 1. But in their case, the writers had a little bit more time to figure out exactly how they fit in. And Hickey isn't as lucky. I think another season would have really helped flesh him out more, but unfortunately, Jonathan Banks couldn't return due to scheduling conflicts. It ends up leaving Hickey as this sort of Greendale Spectre, who disappeared as quickly as he arrived. And I met Greendale Spectre in more ways than one. So, the middle part of Season 5 does suffer from losing Troy and Pierce, but I think the writers had a good grasp of where to take the show. At least, until the last few episodes of the season. I think Advanced D&D and G.I. Jeff feel a little bit more like the concept over character episodes of Community's past, where they focus more on the novelty instead of using the novelty to tell a story. But then, we get to the Subway 2-parter, and it ends up falling into the same pitfalls like much of Season 4 did. It crams a lot of storylines into just 2 episodes, like a Jeff Britta romance retreat, Chang's betrayal, and a super secret Greendale treasure hunt, just to name a few. And because there's so much going on, the whole thing feels a little half-baked. It's still not really that bad, and it has bits like this that get me every time.
Are you alright?
No! I was dying!
But it is a noticeable step down after a decent middle chunk of the season. You can tell these episodes came from a desire to give Community one last epic finale, just in case this really was the show's final season. And in a way, it was. I still like most of Season 5, but I can understand if it's not high on people's favorites. Besides losing 2 main cast members, this season still suffers from 2 issues plaguing Season 4, like the low episode count and the character stagnation. No matter how you slice it, 8 characters is a lot to manage when you only have 13 episodes. Unless you're some kind of writing savant, some characters are going to be left in the dust. And you can see that play out with season 5. While Jeff and Abed get some decent growth, the others don't get as much. I still think the strong character dynamics make up for the lack of strong development, but your mileage may vary. Like season 4, season 5 can be hard to sit through if you enjoyed watching these characters grow from season to season. Shirley in particular gets really shafted in season 5.
We've had our share of focus lately.
Speak for yourself.
The pilot leaves her personal life in shambles, and she's really underused for most of the season. Shirley never gets a chance to bounce back either, because season 5 is her last appearance on the show as a main cast member. Kind of like Donald Glover, there's only so much that could have been done about this. Yvette Nicole Brown couldn't return due to personal reasons, which is completely and totally understandable. It's just a bummer that Shirley's story ends how it does. But Community keeps moving forward. This time the show was officially cancelled, but in the 11th hour, another hero came to save the day. A hero called Yahoo Screen?
I have a placeholder so set up, it makes analogies look like punchlines.
My setup lacks awareness, but my punchline doesn't know.
Abusively cynical one-liner.
This is more accurate than you think.
Absurd reaction.
Season 6 of Community is perhaps the most radically different of the bunch. Half the original cast members are gone, it looks noticeably different from past seasons, and if you were watching along with me back in the day, it was on this new, now deceased streaming service. Kind of like with season 5, I can imagine many fans not liking season 6, especially if you don't like the new characters, miss the old ones, or don't like the more grounded approach to episodes we see in this season. Having said that, I love season 6. Season 5 worked better than season 4 because it was a little more focused on self-contained, slice-of-life episodes with the characters. But season 5 also had to wrap up Troy and Pierce's storylines, adding another obstacle for the writers to work through. Not to mention the two-parter that takes over the final stretch of the show. But with season 6, there isn't any more of that baggage to worry about. This season has the same loose plot as season 5, which is to save Greendale. And as a result, almost every episode is that self-contained, episodic goodness of classic Community. And to make things even better, the episodes are longer. Community up to this point has always had 22 to 23 minute long episodes, and season 6 episodes are almost 30 minutes long. I know that's like a really minor thing to pop off about, but it's just that extra breathing room that helps with all the show's moving parts. Like some of the new challengers.
My name is Elroy Potashnik, and from 2006 to 2009, I was addicted to encouraging white people.
A lot of what I said about Hickey applies to Elroy too. He's another great addition, but he doesn't really have that much time to find his place in the group. Harmon mentioned that it took him a few episodes to really get Elroy, which sucks when the season isn't that long to begin with. That aside, he's still a ton of fun.
Don't worry about that.
He's like a little bit of Jeff and Pierce with an entirely different background, leading to a lot of great moments, like this bit from Basic Email Security.
Me! Point it at me and I will eat it. What? I will bite your little finger off and I will eat it.
Like Hickey, I wish he had a little bit more time to flesh out his relationship with the others. But he's great for how little he's around. Of course, Elroy isn't the only new addition in season 6.
I am trying to find the IT lady. My emails to her get bounced back to me in Aramaic, and when I call, I hear an undulating, high-pitched whistle that makes my nose bleed.
Frankie is an awesome addition. While many characters need time to find their voice or place in the group, she isn't one of them. She fits in so well partially due to the writing, but she also juggles so many roles in the group all at once. Frankie comes in at a point when the group no longer has a designated straight man, and like Michael Bluth, she's a good foil to everyone else's craziness. Not to mention the moments when even Frankie is a little unhinged.
Weirdly long melodramatic emails to your sister, who you might notice never responds, take a hint.
She's dead. I pretend to write her emails as a journaling device. You wretched, invasive little gremlin!
She fills the void of the grounded, normal person like Shirley, and has a lot of personality overlap with Jeff, Abed, and Annie, giving her an easy way to form a connection with just about everyone. And to top it all off, she's literally the no fun police. Like Chang and Pierce, Frankie makes a great antagonist for the others. And a really different one at that, as this administrative Captain Holt kind of villain. Frankie honestly feels like so much of the OG study group rolled into one person, which is weird to say because she still brings her own unique quirks to the table.
So I can't ask any questions right now because all of the questions that I have right now are rhetorical and they end with the word idiot. Do you know what a rhetorical? No, of course you don't know what that is. You're an idiot.
While all the new cast members are cool in their own way, Frankie is by far my favorite. It's really hard to just throw a new character into an established cast, and she's the only one that feels like such a natural fit right away.
As a humble outsider that came in and nailed it,
Yeah, you tell him, Della. The characters, new and old, fit really well together, leading to awesome episodes like Basic Email Security and Modern Espionage, which are just creative spins on older Community formulas. And unlike seasons 4 and 5, season 6 gives almost every character time in the spotlight, like Queer Studies and Advanced Waxing, which focuses on the Dean and Chang, guest starring Adrian Pimento. But like past seasons, season 6 doesn't progress the characters very much. Now, this isn't to say they don't grow, they do. But like seasons 4 and 5, the needle doesn't move that much. Like we see with Abed, and out of the entire cast, Annie might be the one who changes the least. And I think it works for her kind of character. She's one of the more fully formed characters from the beginning, and just needed to mature a little bit before moving on. Which she does, kind of. Like the others, Annie's one of the characters who, for whatever reason, doesn't get all that much to do in the later seasons. Part of this is due to how little time there is, but it's also because of one of her defining relationships. Annie and Jeff is the main romance of Community, and it's a big part of her character for most of the early seasons. The will they won't they is such a sitcom staple, almost to the point where it gets annoying to see again, and again, and again. But Annie and Jeff are a little more unique. The gist of their relationship are two people who obviously connect to each other on an emotional level, but for one reason or another, could never find the right timing to act on their feelings. Like most of Community's good parts, it's a little more complicated and a little closer to reality. Harmon has gone on record multiple times saying that while they love each other, he never wanted to make Community about romantic entanglements.
Because it's not a soap opera. And it's not a show about a relationship.
Take that as you will, it's from the same guy who wrote the love parallelogram in season 1, and sowed the seeds for Troy and Britta. But that's the more meta explanation for why Annie and Jeff are unresolved for so long. Not to mention the age gap that's a little hard to ignore. Then again, wouldn't be the weirdest thing Community's had to address.
Hi, I'm Briggs Hatton, credited author of this week's episode. You might have noticed an emphasis on the topic of incest.
That said, Annie and Jeff's relationship works for what it is. I think that wistful, unresolved nature is part of the appeal. Season 6 resolves Annie and Jeff in about the best way it could have. While it sucks for shipping fans, it is kind of interesting for a sitcom will they won't they to firmly wind up in the won't column. For now at least.
6 seasons and a movie!
But the very nature of Annie's relationship with Jeff leaves her in a weird place. It's really important to her character, but it's also designed to be unresolved, leaving that aspect of her character in limbo until the very end of the show. For Annie's character, I do think it'd be interesting if she came to terms with her feelings earlier, instead of seasons 4 and 5 bringing it back abruptly. It'd at least give her a little more room for more storytelling potential. For example, season 4 is when she finally decides on a major she's really passionate about, and I think that would have made a really neat journey for her over time, instead of the way it's handled in History 101.
Well, now that we're out of history of ice cream, I can finally take advanced claims denial.
You should take forensics.
Well, that was a freebie.
While seasons 5 and 6 don't give Annie that much to do, they do explore some of her other, non-Jeff relationships. I've always been a fan of Annie and Abed throughout seasons 5 and 6, as they become the show's new dynamic duo. And season 6 adds Britta to the mix, giving us more of that sisterly bond we haven't seen in some time.
Before this is over, you'll beg for my forgiveness.
It's not much, but again, only so much you can do with so little time. Like almost everyone post season 3, Annie reaches her potential early, and gets stuck in limbo for most of the show. But like I said earlier, character development is not the only factor in an ensemble comedy. Annie is still a good character, and so is everyone else for the most part.
Please don't jim the camera like that.
Jim the camera?
So, I've been mostly positive about season 6 so far. But like any season of TV, it still has some weak links. I think Basic RV Repair and Palmistry is one of the weaker bottle episodes. There are some really fun character moments, but at times it gets a little too gimmicky. And that applies to Grifting 101 as well. I've always liked this episode, but it does lean into the novelty pretty hard, and is definitely not on the same level as many of Community's other concept episodes. Still, at least Jackie Daytona is a fun guest star. And I think season 6 is peak Britta, but not always in the fun way. She's reintroduced to her parents in lawnmower maintenance and postnatal care, and while it's a good idea, it just ends up making Britta seem even more unreasonable by the end. Whether she's overreacting or not, nobody besides Frankie seems to take her seriously. Which is strange, now that I think about it, considering so many characters have parental issues.
I'm still really hurt by Mom turning her back on me when I went to rehab. You need to let him make his own decisions.
Make his own decisions? Have you met Abed?
Hey, you had a moment of doubt, and here I am to help you through it.
Can we not be so dramatic about this? There are people in this world with serious problems.
Wow, you guys really suck. Kind of like similar storylines in seasons 4 and 5, Britta's relationship with her parents suffer from being a defining aspect of her character, but doesn't have a lot of time to get properly fleshed out. And while Advanced Safety Features is a fun episode, it's just another one in the long list of kicking Britta in the teeth. It's great that she got a little bit more to do in season 6, but the way it was handled could have been better by the end. But Britta aside, I find it hard to really dislike season 6. It has a lot of what I personally love about Community, and then some. It retains the strong character dynamics from past seasons, balances the high concepts and grounded Greendale adventures, and it's generally a little weird, even for Community, like these fake title cards, and the end cards of every episode. I genuinely love all of season 6 end cards. They're like a better version of interdimensional cable. This one, the very last scene of the show, is easily my favorite.
You stupid child.
I wish I had enough time to put them all here.
I am Takashi. I am teenage boy in Tokyo.
I think we all are sometimes.
It's a massive triumph that season 6 was able to end up the way it did. The show had a very tumultuous journey, from losing cast members, getting cancelled, then getting renewed for online streaming. But the team soldiered on, and with season 6, they delivered a show that looks alien, but very much retains the spirit of Community. By all accounts, Yahoo is thrilled. During season 6 production, they were more than happy to negotiate with Harmon for a season 7. But by this point, Harmon saw the writing on the wall. Community's entire cast is incredibly talented, and it was getting harder and harder to bring them together for another long production cycle. And considering where a majority of them ended up, he made the right call. So, it was finally time. Season 6 was to be the final season of Community. Emotional Consequences of Broadcast Television is the series finale, and Community ends in about the only way it could have. The study group, now committee, bantering with one another, with everyone giving their own idea what season 7 would look like. And like so many of the best episodes of Community, the heart and emotion of these characters are front and center. I couldn't think of a more fitting way to end the series. And it ends right back where it started. A lot of fans say that Troy was the heart of the study group, or Abed, or even Britta. And I don't disagree. I think that could apply to any one of these characters. But more than anyone, I think it fits Jeff the most. Throughout this series, I've talked about how many characters stagnate over time. But that's never really applied to Jeff. He's always changed a little from season to season, and he's the one who's changed the most from the man we saw in the beginning. Who was once a selfish, hollow con man, is now a caring, selfless friend, who found so much more than a simple degree. Jeff Winger is the real heart of Community, and his final moments are what makes this series finale. To say that Community has had a rocky journey would be an understatement. As much as I love Community, its flaws are there, and I can never in good faith call the show a true masterpiece. Yet, it's strangely fitting for the show to be as flawed as it is. The Greendale 7 and beyond were very flawed, but they never let their flaws define them. They were always greater than the sum of their parts, and rose beyond their flaws. And I'd say the same thing about the entire show. I know not everyone likes the later seasons, but really, it's a testament to the entire production team that the show was able to work without its original showrunner, recover from losing core cast members, and deliver a satisfying finale to such a wonderful show. Other shows wish they were so lucky. Dan Harmon often talks about how Community isn't a show for everyone, But I don't think that's true at all. I think everyone, no matter who they are or where they're at in life, can find something in Community that resonates with them. I remember watching the show as a community college student myself, and identifying with Troy, Abed, and especially Annie, as they deal with typical young adult struggles. And years later, I can appreciate characters like Shirley and Britta, who deal with the same issues we all face in adulthood. There's a timeless quality to Community, and I'm sure that's one of the many, many reasons the show has endured so long after its final season. I've gone back and forth on my favorite sitcom, but I think this two-part series speaks for itself. I've already referenced Community a lot, and it's not stopping anytime soon. It's a show I'm always happy to come back to, and one I wouldn't mind revisiting in the future, whether it's in the form of doing some sort of episode ranking, or discussing the long-awaited Community movie. There's been a whole lot of me talking, and I'd be happy to hear about what you all love about Community, or what you don't. We've all got our favorite and least favorite characters, moments, and episodes. Let me know down below. And if you, for any reason, sat through both of these videos and haven't seen the show, first off, you have my sincerest thanks. But second, I encourage you to check out the show for yourself. This two-part series can never do the show justice. Community is a massive labor of love, from an amazing composer, talented writers and directors, an exceptional production team, and of course, an incredible cast. I can't guarantee you'll love it, or love all of it, but it's truly one of a kind. It's stupid, absurd, and definitely not perfect. It's just Community.